feels nice. Nice and smooth. This is the one that's sticking, I think.
Oh yeah, that's the one that's sticking.
Case closed. We always use some red Loctite because these are notorious for coming loose when you try and undo the oil pipe if you ever have to take it off for some reason. So right now I'm up to putting my head studs in on this 3-liter engine. So we got two different types of head studs. We have a mild steel, and these are all factory studs which I use on these. And the mild steel stud on normally aspirated engines is used on the intake side. Then we have our Dialer studs. Now these are used on the exhaust side of engine. So what the difference between these two is expansion rates. The install depth is still the same on each stud. It's just this mild steel stud will have a different expansion rate than our Dialer stud. Just putting my breather plate on this engine. I did have to take a slight ream just because when we closed the case, the studs moved closer together. And although the breather plate did fit, it was just kind of tight. And I like to have a little bit of movement in them. So over and above flattening the plate so that we can eliminate issues of oil leakage, we also need to ream the holes just a little bit. Long ways in there. Okay, so we've just put our safety valve in, new spring, new cap with the updated style. Although on this one it doesn't change that much inside. We do have a TSB that we actually made a video specifically on the springs that are used in these, as well as the oil pressure control spring. So this is the updated stuff. It has a guide valve, a different spring than they used to be the same spring, safety valve, and the oil pressure control. This one has changed. It's a lighter gauge, but it's longer. Also, the plug has changed. It has a different step height. Once again, if you want to know more about it, we do have a specific video on just that. So we're just going to lubricate our piston. And all of this is under spring pressure, so you do have to hold it down while you tighten it. I have sent one flying across the shop before. And we are tighten that down. That's it. That's our valves in. Ready to keep going.
What's the blue line from? Looks like heat.
That's heat.
Yeah. Heat after or heat before?
Flipping of the clutch.
Oh, wow. Really? This really shows up on camera.
Yeah. It's got pretty hot, but that's normal. If it was really bad, what we would see would be actual cracking in the surface of the actual disc or the flywheel side. So we're up to the point of calculating our shim thickness on this 3-liter engine. So I'm going to start with CCing my cylinder heads. And then after I'm done with the cylinder head CC, we'll take a dome measurement on a piston, plug it all in along with our case numbers and our head thickness numbers, and calculate how thick a shim we need to put underneath the barrels. So zero my gauge and we're ready to go. Okay, so I have my dome 188, let's see, 89.6. Okay, so we got our piston set up in a barrel. We've already done all of our ring end gaps and checked all of those, and they all came out really nice. So I've got my piston down 17 millimeters so I can clear my dome on my plate. So I know the volume of 95 millimeter cylinder multiplied by a depth of 17 millimeters. So we're just going to measure what we actually get, and then when we do our calculations, that'll tell us our dome volume. Hopefully we have enough tube, otherwise I'll have to change my downfill.
Didn't make it.
Maybe. Will it make it? We don't know. Okay, looks like 94.3 cc's. Okay, so we've just plugged all our numbers in for our 3-liter engine project. We've got our case thickness, bore, barrel heights. I start with a shim pack calculation, which I just take, not really best guess, I know how much has been machined off. Rod lengths, piston pin height, dome volumes, bore, chamber volumes, and these are all numbers that we measured on the bench. The amount of cylinders, our downfill distance, and this is for our crevasse multiplications. So it spits out, the spec on this engine should be around 8.5 to 1. Our finished compression ratio right now with everything is actually going to be 8.7 to 1. Definitely within the margin of error for this engine. A little bit more compression certainly won't hurt it, but this is a sheet that I built that just makes it quick for doing your shim calculations and just cross-referencing everything, making sure everything's the right size. So I'm just putting my pistons on, new circlips, and then I just make sure my piston circlip is seated all the way with a small awl, which feels great. So we're ready for our shim pack and our barrel. Already got the new rings on this one. Lubricated, this is the one that we use for checking the dome quality. Already got my rings orientated where they need to be. So we'll just get our barrel on next. Nobody's going to understand. This is the difference between metric and standard numbers. Shim thickness 0.80. It should read 0.50. Come on. Just deciding to fight me. Okay, first one's on. Okay, so we've got all our pistons and barrels on, our all of our tinware, which we went through and Cerakoted to protect it, so it's all been bee blasted, Cerakoted. And now we're pretty much ready to go ahead and put our heads on. So at this stage, we're at the short block side, which is crank rods up to pistons all installed and set, and the case is moving along. So before I put my heads on, I've got my copper grease on all of my studs. We've got all new hardware for the mounting stuff, for the head nuts and washers as well. More and more we're finding that so much of this stuff is so corroded away that it's really not usable, and it just gives some false torques when you're tightening everything down. So new CE rings installed, and now we're ready for our heads. So we've got our head groups with our sizes. Now the tolerance on these is plus or minus 0.05 of a millimeter. And as if you watch the head video on this one, we've kind of grouped our heads based on the size to be the closest. So on this set of heads, our difference is 0.001 of a millimeter, very, very small. On this group of heads, our difference is 0.002 of a millimeter. Very important to make sure, if you saw the tear down on this engine, this one actually came in with, it had a different base shim installed under one of the barrels. It actually wiped out a cam box. So these heights are very important, both from a machine aspect and when you're assembling them. So we have our new hardware going on. So one of the final checks, all I've done is I've nipped the heads down by hand. We don't tighten these till after the cam box is installed and tightened. That allows the heads to move and lock in properly. But with my machine straight edge across, what I'm looking for is any obvious differences. So if we messed up a barrel shim, this is where it'll stand out. We're putting our straight edge across this surface. Everything should be nice and flat, no light holes showing through, which it's not. So everything came out well. I do measure my shim packs on each individual one, especially with this because our case has been machined, our heads have been machined, and we've used our Excel spreadsheet to punch in all of our measurements and do our compression calculations. So every shim pack I verify when I put it in. Still good practice to use a straight edge. Okay, so I've just set my cam box on here for right now. I just want to make sure my pipe is aligned correctly because we've had all of this out and cleaned. So I'm just going to line up through there. The back bolt on these has the little locator tip that locates through our oil line. I also want to make sure that my oil spray jets are spraying up. We have another one spraying down. Let me grab a mirror. So there's our other jet that is spraying down. Here's our one that's spraying straight out. There it is. And there's our third one. So you can put these pipes in upside down, in which case you'll be spraying the back of the cam box. I find it's easier to do all of this while it's just on the engine. And these cam boxes are reversible too, so it doesn't really matter which one you use unless you've got something funky machined for your AC over on that side. But otherwise, yeah, cam boxes are reversible. The plug in the back here for our freeze plug that goes in to seal the back of the cams is what makes it a left or right cam box. Unless you're in a turbo or an MFI car, in which case they have that open. I wouldn't keep your phone that close. Nope.
I could zoom.
Just the right amount. All right, got a cam box all boot up, not too much, not too little. Line up our oil pipes.
Can I guess the torque?
Sure.
On a 13 across the face?
Yeah, 8mm stud.
8mm stud, but 13mm nut.
Yeah, who cares about that? It's all about the stud. We're waiting.
My guess is I don't know. I'm thinking over 10,
Yeah.
but under 20.
No,
25.
25 Newton meters. How many foot-pounds?
I don't do foot-pounds. We're metric here.
Yep, cam box all torqued down. All the return tubes in, looking good. Nice squish out of our orange Loctite. Not too much, not too little. Everything torqued down nice. Now I've just got to drive my cam plug. And I usually like to do this when it's on the engine, just because it gives a nice stable base. And then we're ready to hit the other side. Okay, just gonna nip these down first.
This is the same head, same torque.
Nope,
Why not?
because it's an M10 stud.
Oh, so it's a little more.
What is the torque?
30.
For a cylinder head stud for an M10?
35 Newton meters.
Technically 33 if you listen to Porsche.
What are you going to do?
35.
What is the schedule for retorquing the heads?
Every 15,000 miles at valve adjust. Up to 1983 models. From 1984 models on, we don't retension head studs because they're a stretch torque to yield method, not a Newton meter method. Very small amount of 574 here. Okay, I'm through the metal stud. There's my depth.
How come that's black?
Because it's special cutting oil for tapping. On this cam box, this is the side that we had to replace because it was bent because of the use of two different size barrel shims. So we had to make some repairs. Getting cam boxes that are in decent shape is tough. So it had a broken stud here, time sewed there. This one had an 8mm stud in the hole, and I just cut it off and used the 8mm stud as a filler, and then drilled and tapped M6 so we can use correct hardware. I got my oil spray pipe. It is being cleaned, and we're just ready to slide that back in. And we'll just tap these in really gently because it's really easy to turn it into a mushroom. And then same as before, we're going to line everything up and make sure that our oil spray holes are in the right location. There's the second one, and then our other one right here, which is spraying directly at this valve, located there. So I can put my plug in, lock the tube, then I'll close in my end caps, and we'll be ready to put this cam box on.
Is it?
Loose. Not like
Just right.
Not like the last time we played with this camshaft.
this the same camshaft?
Yep.
Did we show verifying it was straight?
Yep.
Nice.
Look at that. Amazing what a cam box that's straight can do for camshaft rotation.
Nice.
Tall.
Oh my god. I'm going to say.
6mm thread.
Oh yeah, 10.
So when you've got the
remember.
everything set up right on your shims, that should just press in there like that. See how it's nice and centered in the hole? Means our heads and our barrels and our cam box are all in the right place. Nice and smooth. Okay, so I'm going to set my chain depths now. So I'm measuring to my first intermediate chain sprocket. And I've started with 3 and 3 shims on each cam, which is pretty standard. And then we'll put our measuring bar out and measure up to this face and see where we're at. This is for our chain alignment. The best measurement I'm getting here, trying to make sure we keep this somewhat straightish. 51.73. Going to zero my gauge. We were 51.73. So we're actually going to need to add a shim here to bring it out. 1.5mm shim. So we just put in our 0.5mm shim. 51.72, so a 0.01mm difference. I think I can live with that. The number that we're looking here is 106.53. And we're coming in at 106.65. Let's see where we are on our end float. So we can't affect this change anymore, because if I change the shim by the minimum shim size is 0.5. So right now we're off by 0.12 of a millimeter. I think we're just going to be fine with that. Any change in shim is going to affect a 0.5mm change and put us further out. So chain depths are good. Okay. Yes. Camshaft timing, we got stock camshafts installed. We want to look here. This is our engine designation, 930/03. And that'll tell you where this engine was originally designed to be sent, because there's a lot of different engines built in the same year. Your engine number here will give you some other information. The 639, the 6 means 6-cylinder, the 3 is going to be one of its designations along with 9. So 9 is going to be 79, 3 is going to be the country code that it went to. But for mechanical, this is the number we care about, 930/03. So if we look at our book, we go 911SC, we've got our engine code, 930/03. Then we look at our camshaft numbers. So on our left number, we have 14708, I think.
Yep.
And on our right number, we have 148.08, so our timing is going to be 1.4 to 1.7 millimeters. Okay, we have our intake valve set at our 0.1 of a millimeter clearance, zeroed our dial gauge with about 6 millimeters of preload, and we're going to crank our engine around 360 degrees of crankshaft. Dial gauge is moving. Okay, that's 1 millimeter. So 1.4, which would be my minimum. Wow, we're really, really close. Let's bring it around to Z1. And we're actually sitting at 1.6, which odds of that happening happens about once every 10 engines for me. So I think I'm just going to tighten it up there and see where it shifts to. And then as long as we balance our other size, our spec book isn't giving us an optimal range. When Porsche doesn't give us an optimal range, I usually like to use the midway point or slightly towards the higher valve lift. That's a slight advance in the cam, which will give you a little bit more low-end performance. So very small numbers we're talking here. Okay, we're back to 0. Dial gauge is zeroed.
Yep.
Dial gauge is moving. 1 revolution.
Settled a little higher.
Oh, that's 1.65, still in the range. I can live with that.
Beautiful.
So when I tighten the nut, 150 Newton meters, the gears have moved just a little bit, so we're at 1.65 millimeters on our 1 through 3 bank. So that just means we got to match our 4 through 6 bank at the same, as close as we possibly can to that number. Okay, zeroed our dial gauge on cylinder 4 intake, and we're on cylinder 1 is on overlap right now. So we'll see where we are on this side. Not very promising. Okay, there's 1.65, 0.66. Yeah, we're a little retarded on this side. Which is about what I figured, because the cam, when I put the pin in, was twisted slightly, and I already had load on the chain, so I didn't want to move. Top secret, super secret special tool. Yeah. Stuck in there. So cam staying pretty much still. Hilarious.
So funny. That pin might be slightly. Did it move?
Yeah, it did, but it's going to move when I tighten it. So I'm not super concerned about it. Okay, back to 0. Dial gauge moving. 1 revolution. 1.5. I think I can do better. So that was the first revolution, right?
Yeah.
That's one. Yeah. Off quite a bit. Yeah, see, that's what happened. When we tightened, there was that little bit of...
Oh, there it goes, yeah. I see what you're saying.
So I need to get it on...
Opposite side. Yeah, that doesn't move it when you do that.
Yeah, that's just the slop on that
Tool, yeah.
So let's go to there. And then load it. See, that pin's too high. I think that's going to be our closest bet right there.
Yeah, as you tighten, the cam's coming more into better.
Oh,
Yeah.
screwing around and I'm moving it. Revolution. Wow. That's why I don't really care.
Yeah,
what
that's
it
really
is
bad.
As I tighten it. Something, I knew something was wrong. Because
No,
it's
you're
all
so
going to
far
be... Yeah, when the cam moved, it must have moved a lot more. Yeah, it shouldn't have been over on the side here is the dead giveaway. Hold that, please. No, up here. Yep, that's what I ended up with last time.
Because it
Because
it has to
slop
pull.
in the timing.
Yeah, it has to pull to get the pin in.
Well, as you tighten it, it moves it. But it's going to tighten the cam this direction, so that's going to be awful.
You got to choose which side the slop goes to.
Way too advanced.
It's much better.
Oh, right on the money.
Yeah.
6-4. All right, let's do a final tighten. I think we can live with that. 1.6.
Great.
So within 0.05. That'll work. We're putting hydraulic pressure fed tensioners into this, which my opinion is really the only way to go. These resolve a lot of issues, but also the best time to do this is when you only have one rocker in and it's not on the lobe, because when you have all of your other rockers in, there's pressure on the cam and there's a possibility for the timing to jump. So I always like to put it in. So this side we can see is still on our lobe with our cam setting. And this one allows me to put it in, put the nut on, pull the pin and tension the chain without having to fight all the camshafts. Okay, we've got our spacer in. Now we're just ready to pull our pin. It's good. And then usually what I want to do is I want to give some tension on this. No need to prime any of these two. I see people online and in various unnamed books putting these things in a tub of oil and pumping them and doing all kinds of stuff. You're wasting your time. This is pressure fed with oil pressure. And basically this is a calibrated oil leak. If you could run the engine with the covers off, you'd see oil puking out of here and oil seeping out of here, as oil actually flows through these continually as the engine's running. Final look around, chain wheel's tight, tensioner's in place, spacer's in place, O-rings on, and we've torqued our nuts. Everything else is tight. And we want to carefully slide over here. Hammer. Alright, let's find our missing studs. And we're looking for 1, 2,
5.
3, 4, 5. It's got a seal. We've got all of our rockers in on our first bank and our adjustment set. On our rocker shafts, we've got our O-rings to help sealing. We did have to replace some rocker shafts, and some of them we were able to polish. Same with rockers, we ended up putting 3 new rockers. This engine had 1 broken in it, and we had 2 others that the wear was just too excessive to be able to reuse. The rest of the rockers were gone through, bushings rehoned, all the tolerances checked, rockers polished and ready to go back in. So we're going to close up this side, and then I've soaked everything pretty liberally with assembly oil. Once I get the bottom cover back on, I'll get a lot more oil in here, so this is nice and wet for when it fires up. Studs bent.
Would it go on?
The joys of a used cam box, bent studs. I do not like that at all. Yeah, that's good. Yay, not bent. But not in. Not sorry. Okay, right. Ready to go on the next side. What I have to do is need to map it. It's dark, so this is a tech service bulletin to stop the possibility of leaks. In the case, there's a metal sleeve that's cast in, and they can have the possibility of leakage. So we want to seal up on both sides. You can see the metal pipe in here, and what these will do is they'll actually weep, and you'll get a drip coming out. This is really the only sanctioned place for silicone, and this is what Porsche recommends, the Dow Sil 732. So the bottom cover's on. I've soaked it with a lot more oil, and then our top cover. Okay, brand new factory Porsche oil cooler. More and more we find these to fail the oil cooler pressure test. sanding. So this is a problem area on these cases. So I've already flattened this part on our piece of flat glass. But as you can see, our contact point here is not good at all. And
Hope it's not the case.
it's always going to be somewhat in the case. We can try working it some more, or even putting the bolt on it. So I put on just some standard nuts instead of M6s, torqued them to 10 Newton meters to get a good read on what it actually looks like. And it looks like our only problem is right here at the bottom. So I'll keep sanding till I get this a little bit flatter and at least get some pattern in there. The gasket will take up some of it, but this is actually the biggest leak prone area down here on the case. This is the drain for the intermediate shaft bearing. So when the engine's running, there's actually very little oil here. But when you switch the engine off and the crankcase stabilizes, the oil level will actually come up to about partway through that intermediate shaft. And so this will then become under oil. So it may not drip when the engine's initially running, but it will certainly leak when the engine stops and sits overnight. So a lot more sanding to get this flat because I had high spots around here that were holding it off. You can still see in the Prussian blue where it's a slightly different imprint where the case halves meet, where there's a low spot. The gasket will take that up. And we've got a much better pattern around the front now. Still a lot of areas there where it can create an issue. So on this one, we will probably use a little bit of 574 just to ensure we get a good seal. Don't want to use any other sealant though, other than a 574. So this wraps up our long block assembly of this 79 911 SC engine, 3 liter.